All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another one from Civility Wins. Today is going to be an interesting topic, and we decided to share some of our thoughts about this particular topic because many of the concepts that we addressed in our book, Civility Wins Find Your Peace While Taming the Beast, covers a lot of this type of stress versus hope battle. And also, April is National Stress Awareness Month, something we figured out as we were talking about different topics to address. So, we definitely thought it was a timely thing to cover before this month closes out. So, I'll go ahead and start some introductions here. So, I'm Sandy, one half of the author team for Civility Wins Find Your Peace While Taming the Beast, our book project that will drop very soon. Like, we're literally finalizing book cover at this point. And both Kristen and I are attorneys. We are also very engaged in other aspects of our worlds, whether it be Kristen being a mom or myself being an auntie or any of the community service and activities that we do. So, again, Civility Wins is a passion project of ours. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Kristen and allow her to introduce herself.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Good to see you again. And I am excited, just like Sandy, for today's topic. I think it is very timely. I am Kristen Goss, and I am the second part of Civility Wins, or I would say co-author of Civility Wins, and just excited to talk about stress and hope and if they coexist. That's something that we want to hear from you about, if you think that they coexist together. And in honor of Stress Awareness Month, we really think that this is a timely topic. So welcome to everybody. Chime in. There's a section where you can put in your comments. I do see a familiar face that we will be bringing on shortly, a special guest for all of you and a treat. So, yeah, I'm excited.
All right. So, in thinking about this topic, can stress and hope coexist? There were a lot of things that came to mind for both Kristen and I. And we kind of thought to ourselves, what would be the things that stand out to folks when you think about the word stress? And what would be the things that stand up when you think hope? And so, first, I would say we see stress in many different ways in our lives. And sometimes we think we can control it. Sometimes we feel like it's completely out of our control. But at all times, we know that stress is a possibility. And one of the major things that I find is many times we try to combat stress with this hope idea, right? We have hope that things will be better. We have hope that things will run smoothly. We have hope that there will be some peace in our day to day. But that good old stress comes in and kind of shatters any of our thoughts sometimes. And we really have to catch ourselves and figure out how we're going to react. What are your initial thoughts, Kristen? Stress and hope.
Yes. So both of them are extremely important to be aware of. I would say for stress, I look at that, and I know you and I were discussing this earlier, the different aspects and areas in our lives that it could present itself. It could present itself on a personal basis, in our career. And is there a possibility with us dealing with stress if we're able to grow? So for me personally, I like to really do some self-awareness, especially during this time. These last 2 years have been, different for all of us. And it has allowed me to do a lot of self-reflection, a lot of self-awareness. And for me, stress can be very good. It's a positive thing. It could be a negative thing. And it's important for me to remain aware of certain triggers that bring about positive stress or bring about negative stress. I want to be my best self, because as an individual, if I'm not my best self, then I'm not able to function, you know. And then in turn, I'm not able to be there as a wife and as a mother to 3 beautiful daughters. So I think self-awareness is something that is key for both stress and hope, really. How about
Absolutely.
you, Sandy?
Absolutely. I mean, I 100% agree with you. I think there are so many things that come into play in our lives that we have to be mindful of the level of stress that we have. We have to be able to do a balance and, have a level of hope that can basically soothe to me the things that become stressors in our lives, and finding different ways of coping. And now that you mentioned that, I wanted to say a little something about some statistics, right? So I was reading an article about, National Stress Awareness Month, and basically, according to the American Institute of Stress, about 33% of people report feeling extreme stress. 77% of people experience stress that affects their physical health, and 73% of people have stress that impacts their mental health. And add to that, 48% of people have trouble sleeping because of stress. Look, I'm going to tell you, as a person who definitely has a high level of stress often, I have trouble sleeping. I've had times in my life where stress impacted my health to the point where I went to the hospital. I've had instances where I felt like the stress was so overwhelming, it was kind of like a shutdown. It's crippling. And so I have taken a lot of different steps over the years, especially in the current years, dealing with COVID and trying to kind of find a suitable fit for your day to day when you're just kind of sitting in front of a computer screen. That can be stressful too. I've had to develop a lot of different ways of coping. I think my current situation is that I try to get in the morning a bit of a walk, some fresh air, some sunlight, and I've been going well for a couple of weeks now with a steady routine. And I think having that kind of outlet early on in your day can often make a world of difference. But looking at those statistics, man, what do you think of these statistics? 77% experience stress that affects their physical health.
I am not surprised, but
that's a lot.
Very high.
That's a lot.
Yes. And it's something that we can't get away from. There are certain things that you can control, but then there are a lot of outside factors that you cannot control. And so for me, one of the main things that I do to cope is try to set boundaries, healthy boundaries, whether it's within my personal life or career-wise, because in the area that I'm in, as a collaborative family law attorney and family mediator, I want to be present. I want to be that advocate for my clients. But it's also important to have those healthy boundaries, because I cannot be present without them.
Right.
And, what boundaries work for me might be different for you, Sandy, or for, other people. We all have our different preferences.
Right.
But it's important to be aware of those preferences and to own them and to communicate that with those that are around us, so that we can, have healthy ways of coping with stress. That's something that is extremely important.
Absolutely, 100%. So in having this conversation, Kristen and I couldn't have this conversation by ourselves. We have to incorporate some other people to the chat. But before I go there, I'm just going to do a little plugging, right? We would love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Civility Wins. We have posted a handful of videos at this point, and we will continue to try to bring you some more content. And all of this is an effort to start some dialogue as we prepare for the launch of our book, Civility Wins, Find Your Peace While Taming the Beast. So in the meantime, you can always follow us on Instagram at Civility Wins Series, on Facebook at Civility Wins Series, and you can also find us on LinkedIn, same name, same place. So I'm going to pass it to Kristen so she can introduce our special guest who volunteered to participate in this conversation. You know, sometimes you can't get people to volunteer to have a chat live online where anybody can see it at any time. But we truly, truly are appreciative of this young lady in taking a moment to join us for this lunchtime chat. So go ahead, Kristen.
Yes, I am excited. I would like to introduce you to a very, very great colleague who I'm, considering also as a friend, Tammy Berman. She is a licensed mental health professional, and I want to hear what she has to say about this topic. And so I'm going to bring her on to join us.
For having me.
Thank you for joining us. We're so appreciative of your time.
Yeah, I'm grateful for you thinking of me and happy I could be here to join your conversation. And I love how you clearly have been coming up with different, either they're points from your book or just things to speak to your voice and some of the thought process that inspired your book. And I'm definitely looking forward to hearing about you, reading your book, not hearing about it, reading your book. So thank you so much for having me. And yeah, so what did you have a question? I didn't know. Did you ask me a question?
I have millions of questions for you, but I will start with, if you can, I know I said your name, but if you can briefly just share with our viewers out there who you are and what you do.
So I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I work here in Broward County in Plantation, Florida, but virtually across the state. In my private practice in the mental health side of my world, I specialize in I love working with teens. So I specialize in working with teens. And I'm highly trained in something called dialectical behavior therapy, which is a therapeutic approach that is evidence-based. There's a ton of research behind the efficacy of the treatment approach. And I might share a little bit because it's kind of relating to the topic today. And so that's one of my specialties. The other specialty I have is helping people through the divorce process. And the reason why is because I learned a while ago, 2009, when I marketed myself to family attorneys. And I was thinking, well, who else needs therapy but people going through divorce? And one attorney reached out and they explained to me the collaborative process. And learning about that process for me was a big kind of like aha of a place that I wanted to exist and be a part of. And so I really dove in and became specialized in a variety of things to become competent in helping people through the divorce process. But primarily my love and passion and my focus is on being a collaboratively trained facilitator. So I'm now considered an accredited collaborative professional. Yeah.
Awesome. And you mentioned earlier, you wanted to kind of go into a little bit about the excuse me, I'm going to butcher this, the dialectical, that.
I have a teen client that is new to dialectical behavior therapy, and she came in and she said, yeah, diabolical behavior therapy. And I was like, perfect. It's a comprehensive therapeutic approach. It was originally, just to share, do you want to know a little bit of the backstory or just in reference to stress and hope?
Yeah, a little backstory, and then if you can tie it into how you think it relates to stress and hope.
Okay. So it was developed by a woman named Marsha Linehan, who was living a life of hell. Actually, I read her memoir, and I used to work with severe and persistent mentally ill clients that were in the state hospital for 17 plus years and had many other experiences in community mental health. But this woman, as a functional human being at this point, highly functional, lived in a psych unit for more time than I've ever known a highly functional human being to live in, and underwent some of the most extreme forms of treatment that were available at the time. It was back in the 60s. Anyways, her description is she was living a life of hell, and in the midst of her hell, she made a promise that she was going to get herself out of hell and go back to hell and help other people get out. And
Wow.
it was a long journey for her. She was 18 when she entered there, 22 when she exited. She had to go to college, then master's, developed this whole, accumulated a ton of research to create this evidence-based therapeutic approach, which essentially in the beginning that it first emerged was targeting clients that were identified as having borderline personality disorder or chronically suicidal and chronically self-injurious clients, like cutting or burning, and that was her too. That was her life story. She was that person who was chronically suicidal and self-harming. And but anyway, so this program is one of the only known therapeutic approaches to effectively cure borderline personality disorder, and it's amazing, and it's a comprehensive program, and it involves a few components, and I could take up your whole time talking to you about dialectical behavior therapy, but it's a mix of Zen Buddhism. She's really the first psychologist to bring Buddhist Zen principles into a therapeutic approach. And so it combines these Zen principles with behavioral approaches to therapy and cognitive behavioral therapeutic approaches. And so the piece about dialectical, this is what relates to your conversation, that what Kristen was texting me what the theme was before I got on, and I was like, okay, perfect. So I love, it's a philosophical approach. The word dialectical is a philosophical approach to life. And really what it means is the reality that there can be two diametrically opposing things that can coexist at the same time in the world. And how can it be? And the dialectical approach is finding the synthesis between the truth that two totally opposing things can coexist at the same time. And what's the middle ground? How do you get to the middle ground, the gray, to accept and acknowledge that those things exist despite there being these seemingly opposing things, like stress and hope, like being really stressed with all the things you have going on in your day, or the drama in your life in the background, and yet be able to navigate your day and remain hopeful and positive and find a way through it in an effective way.
Right.
And that's kind of a starting commentary about, it's finding the dialectic, finding the balance, the synthesis of navigating that, of living that, because hope is so powerful and helpful as a healing tool, as a beacon of light to help us to navigate stuff that goes on and shows up. So it's not, I wouldn't say hope is the antidote to stress, but it absolutely is its own thing that can absolutely coexist at the same time as stress and be very helpful to help you through stress. So that was my first thought when Kristen was like, hope and stress. Okay, they coexist.
I love it. I love it. And in your practice as a mental health professional, what are some of the symptoms or things that you have encountered that you can talk to us about in terms of stress?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so many different things show up. So recently, because I work with teens, this one teen I've worked with for years, I haven't seen her in a while, and she popped back up, and it's coming towards the end of the school year for her. And she's graduating. She's going to FSU, and it's like awesome. And she's falling apart and she's floundering, she wants to end. And this is just specific to her, but it's relative, this is an example, and stress is relative to what's going on in our life. And So for her, there was prom and a lot of drama popped off there. Her date cheated on her the night of prom. Heard that
What?
story. Yes, horrible. And so then that was a blow up. Horrible. But that's not the first time I've heard that story.
Wow.
It's just promise breeds drama. And so that was the drama that kind of kicked off a series of events in terms of an emotional reaction and trying to find her way to actually not feel. She was trying to just push that aside and do life and try to finish out really well. But her ignoring her feelings is not so healthy and good. And then there's the stress of how well she's managing all the AP classes and all the final exams. And so this is specific to a college, like a about to enter college kid. But, you know, you guys mentioned some really valuable pieces of information. Like I was writing down, listening to you as you were beginning this podcast. No, this video. What do we call this?
The podcast.
Okay. So it's one key piece. I absolutely agree. And it's actually a fundamental piece of DBT, of dialectical behavior therapy, is actually, Sandy, you said it first, is having the self-awareness, the being aware of your triggers, the things that bring about stress, and how well you're managing and balancing. And so in dialectical behavior therapy, it's the first skill that you learn is called mindfulness. And there's many components to it, but essentially the concept is about enhancing your capacity for awareness in the moment to moment. And that includes what's happening within you as well as in your environment. But you first need to work with you. Life starts with you and how you're doing with you. And so that is such it's the first step. It's your greatest tool, is the awareness of how, the read within yourself of how you're doing, how you're balancing everything. You guys talked about the cool thing you said, Kristen, that is a very unique, like, new concept I just started learning about with trauma, is that with stress, there's positive stress and there's negative stress. Like, actually, stress is useful and there's good things about stress because it challenges you. It helps you to learn and grow. And that's a new, like, idea in my recent history that in books that I'm listening to and whatever. But the awareness of having the balance of that, how much stress in your life is positive and helpful and how much is not. And as well as, your balance of work, life, and family, and COVID, the pandemic and the shutdown and us doing life from home forced, like, really threw everything upside down in terms of balance. You're working from home now 24, like, where's the boundary of home to? So that's been a challenge for all of us across the world. We're all, as a human species, we're sharing this unique major shift. And then Sandy, you started reading the statistics, and that's so daunting.
Can you imagine the percentage? I mean, it's just out of it's not what I expected. I thought the numbers would be, mid-range or something, but in the 70th percentile, that's so a lot.
Daunting. Oh my God, that sounds horrible. And how, like, what are they including in that definition of stress?
Look, I would love to know, because this is actually a recent article. This was put out by ABC7 in Chicago. It's some kind of investigative report, and I'm like, 77%. Like, you're tap dancing on 80. Like, you could be 100.
So, you know what? My initial reaction to listening to those statistics from you, Sandy, is similar to the feeling I get, and I'm totally exposing myself right now to say this, but it's the reason why I almost don't listen to news at all. I don't listen to the news, and that's horrible, because I think of myself as an educated and caring person of the world. Right. But I also know the emotional impact that news has had on me, and for me, my boundaries of what I can control and what I can't, and the impact to me, it's a deliberate, intentional choice, and it comes with its consequences of me not being well educated on the person that was shot down the street. And then the thing, but my first reaction listening to you was also about, I wish, and this was a thought that came out of the COVID life experience, I wish that the news, as an example, because I feel like it's somewhat of a negative echo chamber, so to speak. I wish they focused on, okay, there are problems, but what are the unique, creative, problem-solving ways that people are tackling these problems?
Right.
Like, there's no, what I feel, I mean, I could be wrong because I don't watch the news anymore, but I don't see a lot of news on how people are solving problems and addressing things and learning from the past. And if we had more of that, it would help with regards to hope.
Right.
You would be more encouraged, like, we got this, we'll figure it out. I've been watching news for the last 6 years of people figuring stuff out, so I know there's a way. But no, it's all about what's wrong and what's not working, and so I just wish we could somehow make a change on that one.
I mean, those stories are so few and far between. I mean, even if they report on it, it's pushed aside by breaking news, and this is what's. I don't even watch news anymore. I catch my news snippets from YouTube and from social media. So whatever little snippet I can catch, I'll catch it, but I don't even want to hear the whole story. It's interesting that you mentioned something that Kristen said earlier about there being positives, to stress. Because I feel like the reason that they can coexist, because to me, a lot of times people will think they can't exist together, right? You have to have all this hope and it's just going to douse away all your levels of stress. But to me, I think there are positive and negative levels of stress, just like there's hope that technically is positive. But to me, there's a negative to hope as well. I think sometimes people get so wrapped up in this idea of hope that they don't see the things that they need to do to address issues. So it's kind of like, I describe it as, when people go to church and they're just going to church. They don't do anything else. They don't read the Bible. They don't practice anything. They don't participate in anything, but they go there and they listen to the music and they feel fueled and they listen to the message and they get amped up and they hear all this stuff and they have good things going on. And as soon as they walk outside, they're cussing at the person that's driving across, crossing them on the road.
In this subtle.
Yeah. So I think both of these concepts, both of these ideas, we can have positives and negatives of them. And that's why they can coexist, because you have to find that balance between, because you can't have a stressless life. Like, you would just be like mush. Everything would go your way. There's no pushback whatsoever. Can you imagine what that's like? Because the moment that something would go wrong, you would just lose it.
No growth, no opportunity for growth.
Nothing.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. We would be this neutral going through life, like in this plane, like what, and then the moments, how would we react the moment there was some adversity? Unequipped or fascinated but stuck? Like, what would we do?
Because that plane would be a plane to nowhere. You're literally just coasting along, and it's like, okay, but where am I going? I can't go up. I can't go down if I'm going to coast.
Right. I love how you pointed out that the flip side of hope, that it's so interesting. It's so true that, it's kind of like we can have too much of any one thing, and there's a balance to strike with everything. The Tao. I'm getting all zen. But yeah, that's such a good point. It's true. It makes me think of that movie. Have you ever seen Inside Out and Joy in Inside? So it's a Pixar Disney movie, and it's about all these emotions, and it starts with this one emotion, joy. And she's running the show because everybody loves joy, but it's like she keeps ignoring sadness, and like it's a whole. If you haven't seen it, but it gets to a point where everything is starting to fall apart because there's too much joy, and she's not giving space for any of the other emotions to exist. And the reality, it's great for kids, but also for adults, and it's a great message. And it's kind of to your commentary about hope, and that you can have too much hope, that it can blind you to stuff. It can, that can't be the only thing you hold on to. But it's useful, but yeah.
Oh man, I love that.
Wow.
All right, Kristen, pull out that question bank, because I know you have a list of other things.
Well, I was going to ask Tammy's expertise on this. Do you have any tips that you would be open to sharing with us related to this topic, whether it's how we could cope with stress, how stress and hope can coexist? Any thoughts that come to mind?
Yeah, for sure. As a therapist, and just to give tips for anybody to help manage themselves better. And I actually pulled it also from listening to you guys as I was writing notes, just on some valuable points you guys were making. First of all, the number one thing when somebody comes in and they're overwhelmed with the most common stuff, which is anxiety and depression, the number one thing that I start searching for, not that, there's lots that we talk about and I follow my client, but once we get down to it, the number one thing I look to is, first of all, sleep hygiene and the quality of sleep, because your brain is an organ too. It's like this, it's a working mind. It's your powerhouse engine that works your body, and it's potentially a spiritual, there's beyond. But if it's not in good working order, kind of like if your phone isn't well charged, then you're not going to have good battery life for the day. And sleep is everything can be absolutely be affected for sleep. So that's a really key piece to, when things feel like they're falling apart and you're getting overwhelmed for whatever reason, drama, depression, anxiety, whatever the thing is, a great primary target to focus on is start with your sleep. What if a plant is I'm not a plant person, but I'm assuming if a plant was dying, the first thing you do is water it. I'm not sure. Maybe. I don't know.
Probably try to water it and try to prune it a bit, remove some dead pieces.
Okay. So it's kind of like that with, like, once you start checking yourself and start acknowledging, okay, everything is a little out of whack and not working well, one of the number one things to start focusing on is your sleep, for sure. And I'll just say, as a general rule of thumb, you should be sleeping in the dark hours of the night, not in the daylight hours. It should be about 7 hours, give or take, uninterrupted. And so there's many things you can do to work towards that quality of sleep, like non-medicine things you can do, like exercise is really, there's a mountain of research in terms of the value of regular exercise on helping to regulate sleep, as well as to mitigate anxiety and like elevate your mood and address depression. But for sleep, exercise is great. And then there's also like sleep rituals that can help you. So sleep is an important one. You guys mentioned going for a walk in a sunlight and having a routine, and that you've started that. For me, through COVID, especially with life being like thrown upside down and inside out, my thing became biking. I needed to get out of my house and like feel the wind in my hair. And so it, like going for a walk or biking, sunlight is very important for us. There's natural vitamin D sources we get from sunlight, and that's known to elevate mood. So it's a natural source of mood elevation.
Okay.
As well as being close to nature. I don't know that much of I've heard hearsay secondhand from articles and research that's coming out on being close to nature, legit having actual scientifically evidence-based effects on our mood and our well-being. So going for a walk, yes. And the routine and structure. So for this girl, my teen I was just describing to you, she had an overwhelming pile of stress, and she couldn't like see the forest for the trees. So a piece of what we were doing and it's very typical for teens that they need help with this because they don't have good practice with this, is figuring out how to parse out the massive lump of stress. What can I take out and put over here? So like first compartmentalizing everything, but then to start to reintegrate for her, it was acknowledging she needed more structure and routine. And that's a really, even though you might not have school, you might not have work, having some kind of routine really does help us stay on a track, some kind of a track.
Right.
So you were mentioning that, Sandy, with like your walks, and you like to do it in the morning too. And
Right.
we are at our most optimal functioning from a brain awareness standpoint in the morning. And you
Okay.
can probably your best thinking in the morning.
Yes.
You're probably most at peace in the morning, and most like you're ready, like your battery is full, and you are at your highest emotional mental capacity to set intentions, to plan your day, to weed out stuff that's like ailing you from yesterday and weeks and months from the past that might be tugging at your sleeve. And then, Kristen, you said healthy boundaries, and that's a work in progress if it comes to within relationship. And there's a lot of skills. So then we're going to get way into therapy, which I won't, but just effective communication skills are the tools that will help you improve boundaries when there's stuff not going right. And so it's partly learning how to make sure you're taken care of, and that you're doing a good job to take care of you, and that you're figuring out ways to effectively communicate and address the things with your relationships. But it's also boundaries around that balance that you guys said. And it's going to be up to you to kind of assess what balance is needed and best for you, but the work life family balance, that's so those are my long-winded answers for you, but those are the basics. That's as the first, when somebody's really in disarray coming in, those are the first things we start tackling, is all that stuff. And I also, one more thing is nutrition too, because your brain does need proper fuel.
Right.
And so not like eating healthy versus not absolutely does have an effect on the quality of the functioning of your brain, actually, and your ability to tolerate stress. And so giving your body regular, 2-3 hours snacks and meal, food is important, and not processed, more from the earth, less processed is better too.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I heard about 4 things from you to sum it up. Sleep, good sleep at night, preferably.
At night.
Yeah, well, people I've been there, done that. People are like, I'm sleeping. You're sleeping from 12 to 2 in the afternoon.
Sleeping on the job.
Routine, having a good routine, getting some air, some vitamin D, boundaries, and nutrition. So great. That sounds very well-rounded. And I like how you said it's a work in progress. I think Sandy said this as well, Philip. Every single day, it's a work in progress.
I feel that's like my true motto of how I see myself. Like that's how I see life. Is we are all continual work in progress. Everything around us, we're constantly evolving.
Yeah. I mean, I would say too that, when I think of the things that you just spoke about, I know that can cross both personal and professional, wherever we are in our career. But one thing I wanted to ask you about is when we think about working in our professions and the overwhelming amount of demands that we may have, especially since we're providing services and not like, we're not pumping out products technically, we're providing a service. That service is taking from us emotionally, right? It can be draining at times. It can really take us to places that already on top of our personal lives can be a huge demand, right? How would you speak to dealing with stress in the professional space? Because sometimes we can't avoid the high level of stress because of the fact we're compounding personal life and professional life. But would you say that there are some special things that you would refer professionals to do in terms of managing it within the workspace?
Well, I think the fundamental mindfulness piece, like you having a good sense of yourself, is absolutely the starting point, no matter what, if we're talking personal or professional, is that having a good radar read of your temperature in the moment, throughout, like you need a good thermostat. And so, but sometimes it's going to get off. You're going to get a little too cold or a little too hot, but you're the one that needs to monitor that. I lost a view of you guys for some reason.
I hear you.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I lost you, and I was like, did I lose you? So yeah, having a good like that, you're gonna be your best caretaker. Nobody else is, yes, there's outside people that if you're not paying attention, they're gonna be like, are you okay? Like, can I, do you need to talk? What's going on? And that's great, but it really needs to start with you being the best radar for yourself in the moment. And then, so that's as a professional, to answer your question, I would give that same advice, whether either way, but for the context of professional. And when you're getting overheated, it's time to pull yourself off the stove or the oven. You need to give yourself a timeout and to cool down. You're not going to have good perspective when you're overheating. What is needed, no matter what the context, is to cool down and give some space and time away so that the temperature can come down before you will have the actual capacity to really assess things well. And then, so that's a key. If the better you can do with that, you're going to do better and better no matter what it is. And then the other thing from a professional standpoint for me, and I would recommend this to professionals I work with, is a regular check-in. For me, I do it for the most part in the morning, in the shower, or riding my bike in the morning, or at night on my drive home. And what I'm doing as a regular check-in is kind of assessing the things through the day that went well, that I liked, and I want to continue to work on, that keep doing those things. The things that did not go well, that either, that if they didn't go well, how do I troubleshoot them and improve upon them next time? And so I start to internally troubleshoot. I may make plans in my mind of how to gather more information so I can make an effective plan for next time. Because for me, the expectation is there's always going to be a next time, no matter what it is. And so I do this kind of internal inventory and assessment of things that were good and the things that were not so good, and what can I do to improve upon them as the work in progress that I am. So that's a general tip that I would say for professionals. We're taxed a lot, and we have things that are going to throw us off, and we're not perfect. And I guess, so one last tip to your question is self-compassion, self-acceptance. Those kind of go hand in hand, of that we are all works in progress, and we're not perfect, and we're people. We're human beings with emotions that, if you had a real good understanding of the way the brain functions, you would know you're never, ever in a million years going to be perfect, because if the emotional system gets revved up, it will take over your ability to think things out and effectively do things well. Just is the way it is. So having that self-compassion and acceptance of tomorrow's a new day and you're all right, and it's you're doing the best you can. Is it always good enough? No, it's not always good enough. Would you wish it to be better sometimes? Yeah, but you got to work with what you have, and you're doing the best, that kind of thing.
So what you're saying is I should not be responding to that email that I get that gets me all riled up, and I can't control myself. My fingers start depressing the keys.
Yeah. It's, in the world of attorneys in litigation, as I've tried hard to stay away from my own personal trauma as a child of divorce, but it's the world in which you guys are brought up is very conflict based and very black and white, forcing you to a position and to and it makes it so the environment is very strong for you guys. I feel for you, it's a hard environment to be in and work in, because it pulls you in like a moth, like the flame is there.
Right.
And So then you actually have to fight even harder than the average person to be aware of, what is this? Is this, this energy that's sucking me in, that's like, is this going to be productive? How do I engage with this in a way that's going to be effective and helpful and like keep me peace, like at whole, like it's not going to tear me apart, Yeah. You guys have a heart, and it's wonderful. Like the interface of the collaborative world is this intermeshing of mental health and attorneys. And I love this space that we're in, because we're like helping you guys along, those that are like, I don't want to be in the flames. Like, I don't want to be burning. And we're like, we need to help those that are floundering in the world, to work with the people that are seen as decision makers and like advocates, and we're having this cool interface, and I love this space that we're in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of, and we'll wrap this up, because I want to be cognizant of your time, Tammy, but Civility Wins. And I think Sandy was kind of getting to this. As you know, we are co-authoring the book Civility Wins, Find Your Peace While Taming the Beast.
Love that title.
Yes.
So essential.
Stemming from a lot of venting sessions, holding each other accountable. I think accountability is key.
Right.
Even to this topic of stress and hope.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But when you think of civility and how it would relate to this topic today, does anything come to your mind, Tammy?
Well, when we get too stressed and too overheated, that's where we lose our ability, our real good capacity to be civil. I mean, we just become primal. We go into our fight and flight mode, our animalistic, the reptilian brain happens. And when you're operating from there, it's not a high level of functioning. It's actually a really low primitive level of functioning. But yet that's the way our brain works. It is and that's why awareness is so, self-awareness is so, so important, because yes, we are animals. We've actually existed on this earth for millions of years, and we have this reptilian brain that eventually grew this wonderful outer cortex that's given us the ability to like think and organize, work together, and like hope and dream and like create stuff. That's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we still have the reptilian brain that's keeping us alive and working us through millions of years. And it's very inflexible. It's actually the most powerful part of your brain. If you got shot, this is like just as a anecdote, if you got shot in the head and it went through the inner cortex, which is the reptilian brain, it's the thing that's kept you alive for millions of years, you'd be instantaneously dead. Because it's in control of everything. But if a bullet went through your head and it just went through the outer cortex, you'd be fine. You would not be fine, but you would be alive. Maybe you would be brain dead, or some personality or some pieces of your, but you would be alive. And it's speaking to how much newer the outer cortex is, and that higher level thinking and functioning, which is where hope exists. So I'm going to bring it round.
I love it.
I'm coming around the bend. So
I love it.
It's just, we are human beings. We're a species that's been here for quite some time. And so sometimes stress can take us to a place of where we can lose our civility. And if the goal is, if your interest is to live in a higher level of life, higher functioning, and be civil and work towards more collaboration and peacemaking and that kind of thing, then it first starts with that awareness. You will be taken to places where you are primal, but if you have the awareness that you're there, that's the place to not act. Just don't act from that place. It's the time for you to pull yourself to the penalty box. We should act, or the goal is to act from a place of more hope and helpful stress, not unhelpful stress. So that's my commentary to you about how civility
I love it.
that.
Yes.
So yeah.
Man, thank you
guys
so
are
much, Tammy.
Oh, you're awesome. We can talk all day and night.
I know. I love how you bring this, like, we get to have like just a thoughtful discussion for, like, that's a great opportunity. This is therapeutic for everybody, for us. And maybe if people are listening, hopefully for them a little bit, but you know, it's great to participate in this conversation.
Absolutely. Well, you'll look forward to our next topic. We're gonna dive into relationships a little bit next month. So stay tuned.
Nice.
But thank you so much, Tammy. We definitely appreciate your contribution to this conversation because it's one that's much needed, especially now as we are in COVID phase 3 and still in limbo. Don't really know what direction we're going in. It's kind of like, are we going back to COVID mode? Are we coming out of COVID? Are we maskless? Do we wear a mask? Like, I don't even know. Do we sanitize anymore? Do we social distance? I just feel like I get so many mixed messages, and that can create stress to me. Like, it doesn't give me hope that we're getting out of COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's confusing the babies, right?
Yeah.
My middle one the other day, what did she say? One of the kids in her class had COVID because he coughed. And then of course, the oldest one, Miss Smart Alec, was like, not COVID, you cough all the time. Right? So just because he coughed doesn't mean it's COVID. So.
It's the default though. The moment you're sick, it's like, oh, is it COVID?
Look, my sanitizer spray comes right on out. I'm like, sorry. Yeah, I don't care what these people are saying. People are still getting COVID. Yeah. People are still in need of protection, whether the masses recognize it or not. But you know, it is what it is.
True.
I can't talk.
I know we're in a weird place of, you know, now everyone's kind of doing what they feel is right because we are in a bit of a, you know, floundering middle space.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, another day for Civility Wins. So in closing, I'll make a little comment about civility. So if you Google the word civility, you'll get something that says formal politeness and courtesy in behavior or speech, which basically means a lot of the communications I have with my opposing counsel is not civil, to say the least. But, you know, in talking about civility wins and broaching this concept of can stress and hope coexist, I think an essential thing that we have to understand is it's all about us. Our understanding of who we are, what we're all about, and what strategies we need to put into place for ourselves individually, right? Because what may work for Kristen or for you, Tammy, may not work for Sandy. I may need to do something completely different, or maybe something that you say to me might resonate and I'm like, oh man, that might work. Right. So we have to really be open to the opportunity, but also understanding that our plan of action, whatever that course is individual. And many times people don't recognize the value. And I'm going to mention, you know, when it comes to therapeutic type services, you know, seeking out some counsel when it comes to your mental health and finding yourself in a place where you can help yourself with more personalized attention, right? Because I can vent to Kristen, but if I'm having some issues and I really need some professional support, I may need to really consider that, right? Because the venting can continue endlessly, right? We can talk about the same things over and over, which we do. But at the end of all days, you know, even though we vent about stuff, it's just to get it out of our system, right? You know, we end up moving on with whatever we're doing. But if you find that you're going through these sessions and it makes you more and more angry and you're not able to let go, I definitely say that folks need to consider, you know, different options. And the beauty right now is, especially due to COVID, you know, you have a lot of online options for you to really get some support. But overall, I would say civility wins. No matter what the circumstances, the issue, the challenge, it could be your back is completely against the wall and you don't see a right, left, or in front of you. Trust me when I say this, and Kristen can co-sign me on this. Civility always wins.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it may not look like what we expect, but it's definitely the avenue that we have to keep for ourselves, because trust me, it brings more peace than anything else.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
All right, Kristen, any last comments? And we'll let Tammy close us out.
Sure. No, just wanted to remind everyone to please check us out. We do have our YouTube series, which we're on right now, Civility Wins series. We are also on Instagram, so please find us there. Civility Wins. Find your peace while taming the beast. And be on the lookout. As Sandy mentioned earlier, we will be discussing relationships next month, the month of May. So a lot of good, juicy, and helpful things, I'm sure, will come out of the conversation. So I will turn this part over to Tammy Berman, our mental health expert here today with us, to close us out.
I think you guys are doing an amazing job. And the way I see your commentary and your upcoming book is it's an agreement, a decision, an intention, an understanding that civility is the way to go. And actually in DBT, in dialectical behavior therapy, the very first skill you learn is about the 3 states of mind, and the emotional mind, the reasonable mind, and where they intersect. This dialectical middle place is called wise mind. And that's where civility exists. And you guys are saying civility wins. That's the place. And that truly is the ultimate goal that we work towards in DBT, is operating from a wise mind place. That's the goal at all points in time. Let's approach life from a place of civility, from a wise mind place, because you're going to be more successful. It's going to, serve your ultimate goal of internal peace, being in good relations with everyone around you, a good quality of work life, personal life. So you guys are solid. Love it.
On that note, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Tammy, don't go away. Give us one moment. We're going to go ahead and close you guys out. Join us again. Please stay tuned for our next conversation. Click the notification bell on our YouTube channel, Civility Wins, and we'll be back with more content. Bye, guys.
Bye.